Welcome to episode 16 of the Service Course Report. I'm Ed Philbrick, joined by Kurt Stockton. We'll see if Darren will be able to join us partway through, or maybe we'll catch him next week. To be determined. What's up, Chaos?
Living the dream. Still January here in NorCal. We've had some nice weather. Yeah, and excited that the racing is slowly getting going. So that part of what we're talking about here is at the Service Course Report. We're going to have a little bit more content, and it's been fun. Slowly watching some of the riders on their new teams get out and ride. I think we're still kind of focused on the road stuff, and the road racing is what's starting. We don't have any mountain bike going on yet. So, and then of course a little bit of gravel riding and racing has started up here on the West Coast with myself at the Low Gap Hopper last weekend and you at Gravel and Wine. So, yeah, life is good. How about you?
Yeah, the pros started riding down at Rattle Gravel, which is a spin-off of Steamboat Gravel.
Oh, the event down there, yeah.
Yeah. So Romain Bardet seems like he's not taking this as his retirement tour, his 2-year leisure contract. He seems to be very focused on racing.
Yeah, that's right. I think you mentioned that last week about how he came in and won, which was pretty wild. I did not get to see that one. Kind of curious what the parkour was like, but there were a couple guys that weren't slouches that finished out the podium with him too. So, yeah.
Yeah, Cam Jones, Alexei Vermeulen, I think we're on the podium. It was a course for 45s is what I heard, like fairly groomed. And Romain Bardet will be at Unbound, and he's already working on his setup, so be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's these guys that have had the years and years of World Tour seasons under their belt, year after year, riding Grand Tours, doing all the mileage. I think it is more like, to your point there, the setup and what they're going to do and figuring that out. I don't think that their endurance is not so much an issue. I think it's more their setup and then getting the nutrition right, especially at an event like Unbound that's self-supported other than the 2 aid stations. You got to get that stuff dialed. It's not like you can't just put your hand up and have the car come up and hand you a bottle. Yeah, that should be really cool to see.
Well, he's teammates with Ian Boswell, which I know that sounds interesting. Ian's on a Specialized, Roman's on Factor. It's sort of like a pas normal type loose team when it's convenient, not a team when they don't need it to be a team. But anyway, Ian's been consulting and telling him how to get his setup dialed in for Unbound, from what I heard. And Ian Boswell is the most unassuming, overperforming ex-World Tour pro I've ever seen. I mean, he does so well, hardly training. So
yeah. He's got to be doing a little bit of training. I think it's all relative, right? Yeah. His easy rides might be training for you and me.
Yeah. Anyway, they're teammates under Rafa.
Oh, is that what it is? So it's a Rafa program, huh? So
Cam Jones, Bardet, Ian Boswell, and I apologize, I don't know the females, but the woman who won Rattle Gravel is on the Rafa team.
Oh, really? Is Kate Courtney part of that program, or is she on her own? Her allied
I think she's
Rafa
on her
thing?
own.
Yeah.
She's on her own deal.
Huh.
Yeah.
I guess my algorithms aren't pushing that information to me, and I haven't been looking for it. So, but I'm gonna search this out right now while we're talking because I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of podcasts. You asked me how I podcast, and I listen while I'm riding. I like to ride alone a lot. And if I'm on a scenario, usually it's an uphill scenario. I try to do at least half my ride uphill is when I listen with open ear headphones. So I listen to I don't know, some podcasts reporting on the Rattle Gravel.
Uh-huh.
There was a fair amount of media, but
interesting. Yeah, I don't see. Just doing a little. I searched Rafa racing and nothing there. Yeah, well, Rattle is right. You were talking about it. It's the spinoff of Steamboat. I think because Tiffany Cromwell did well at the early versions of Steamboat, and then brought the race to Australia, and then with her and Valtteri Bottas, they then brought it to Finland. So yeah, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I was not aware of that. I guess they need to start looking this stuff up so it gets pushed to me because there's so much
Yeah.
going on. Yeah,
You know that in F1, Bottas is going to be the driver for Cadillac.
I
So
had heard
Cadillac,
that. I had heard a
yeah.
rumor about that. That's pretty wild, right? But was it you that was saying about the Cadillacs are going to have Ferrari motors in them
for
initially?
for the first couple years until they perfect a Cadillac or General Motors motor
Yeah. Wow, that's
engine.
that's kind of like when Trek first won the Tour de France, huh? Having a Cadillac in F1. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of as there always are, right? The establishment gets a little bit grumpy when the new kids come into play. Well, that'll be interesting to watch and see how that goes. But yeah, I wasn't aware that actually had gone through. So very cool.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Mario Andretti was behind it, but
Yeah.
F1 for some reason doesn't like Mario Andretti, and so they had to kind of shift it around. Andretti Racing had to kind of shift it around, but they're pulling it off, and here it comes. You brought up Trek. I think those early U.S. Postal riders were on light speeds painted like Treks, especially the time trial bike. So, that it takes time to get your technology up and running.
True. Yeah, that is true. I know they definitely were on the Lightspeed TT bikes. They might even have been branded Lightspeed in that first year. Um, huh. Well, that'll be cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we were talking. You were at Gravel and Wine last weekend, right? So kind of
Was
like the weeks that were, um, and I was at the Low Gap Grasshopper, first one. How was Gravel and Wine?
every Paul, I was in the food line. Paul Dunlop is the promoter. He goes, "You pre-registered?" Because he was like trying to check me in at the food line. Because typically I like register on the morning of the event, and I'm the worst of the late registry trend that's going on.
Yeah. You're one of
So
those guys, huh? Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I'm always on the
Fair enough.
fence, going up to Temecula and riding on sandy roads. Yeah, does it really inspire me? But man, is it fun. There's something about graded high speed sand roads. You can really swoop the turns and ride it
Yeah.
really fast. So I call it, it's sort of like I never raced downhill skiing, but I always imagined in my head that I did. And I'm a great consumer of watching it on TV. So it felt like skiing around gates in a downhill run, not slalom, not tight, but big,
Like,
big long turns. So it was a lot of fun. They started the long course 45 minutes before the medium distance. So that was kind of an interesting twist. So instantly I got myself in the lead group of the medium course, and I'm like, whoa, I don't belong here. So I drifted back to the second group as to not blow up, and I finished 15th overall, maybe third in my age group. It's pretty good. I was able to climb with the lead woman in that race for most of the time until she dropped me on the downhill.
yeah.
Uh,
Guess you haven't been putting
yeah,
that much time in on the gravel bike, huh? Did you end up riding your gravel bike or your mountain
yeah,
bike? Gravel
gravel
bike?
bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I just got dropped on the downhill by someone like half my body weight. Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
But she was tenacious and she had front suspension and she was just on it.
Yeah.
And I didn't care maybe as much as she did. So anyway,
Or you cared more
um,
about not falling, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah. How is I
yeah.
mean I remember when Darren used to live down in Temecula, getting out there and riding a little bit, like you said, those sandy roads. Was it pretty drifty? As you're going through
Hmm.
those corners, so you can take like it's like giant slalom or downhill, right? Those big
Yeah.
wide turns, but it's still a little bit slippery. Like you got to get your weight right. I mean, and what about we talk about tires often. What did you use tire wise?
So I'm ultra lazy on changing tires right now. So I've had these 40 Pathfinders, the new version that came out last year. I think they call them Pathfinder Fast. So I had those, and I have had them on since last April, and I haven't changed my tires. I've checked my sealant, by the way, but I
Yeah.
haven't changed them because I've ridden that gravel bike 6 times since then. They were perfect tires because there was a
Nice.
lot of road, and I never felt unsafe because of my tires.
Yeah.
Like my setup was perfect. You know, I've been riding a lot of, cross country bike and single chainring. I was like kind of missed that a little bit, like the double chainring, a little annoying, but you know, probably was effective on that kind of a course.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because no
yeah,
like mountains in Temecula, right? It's all
no,
that kind of that rolling terrain kind of power stuff, right? Yeah.
yeah, we did
Mhm.
3,200 feet of climbing, and there was
Yeah.
one really steep section,
Yeah.
but yeah, no hike a bike. He's taken that out. He has to have that kind of January mindset, like a lot of the elite long course people were kind of mixing with me at the end, which was to my benefit. And one guy was cramping, and I go, dude, it's January. Of course you're cramping. It's like,
Yeah.
don't be hard on yourself. It's January, like
Right.
he takes out the hike a bike. He tries to keep it, doable and obtainable, and based on feedback that he's gotten. So this is a good turnout of
Nice.
people. A lot of people, doing the 20-mile version. Most of the bulk of the people did the longer course. Um,
So what were the
good food
distances?
afterwards.
Three
Let's
distances or
say
two?
60, 40, 20.
60, 40, 20. Okay. That's pretty doable then, yeah. And how was the turnout?
Yeah. I would say it was good. I
Yeah.
I wouldn't have noticed any kind of drop off if there was one. I would say, but I didn't study the numbers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's for when you're paying the bills. How many
Yeah.
how many entries did
Yeah.
you have? Yeah. And the weather was good? I mean, I saw a little bit of footage, video and stuff. It looked like it was pretty
Yeah, I
temperate, pretty
think
SoCal weather.
Yeah, we've been having, January here. Today it's like almost 80 outside, but it was partly cloudy, and I think there might have been some morning rain. There was morning rain in San Marcos, where I live, on the way up. I don't know if it hit Temecula, and I think that helped the conditions.
Yeah.
Um, I, and it wasn't cold because it can be very cold there, and it wasn't hot, so it was kind of ideal.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, so I was, up here rode the Low Gap Hopper. So it's the first in the 5 race series for 2026 and I think it's I don't know, sixth year maybe of Low Gap out of Ukiah, California. So it's pretty far up north off of the 101, north of most of the wine country that people are familiar with. And first time he had two distances. Low Gap has always been one distance, and I swear I think it used to start out with like a 2,000 foot climb in like 8 miles or something. It was terrible. I mean, you started and you went up this just like this horrendous road, and they changed it now and two distances, and we started on the private road that the event has finished on, and then it went out kind of like a lollipop. So it started and finished on the same road, going out and coming back. But he also had two distances, which was pretty cool to see, especially for me because I was able to ride the medium distance, which was like 36 or 37 miles. Probably still about 4K of climbing, but it was people ask me how the ride was. I said, well, if someone could design a course that was like the most anti KS course out there, you would have this one that started and climbed for 13 miles. It went up 2,000 feet, little or 2,100 feet in like 13 miles. So it was. So I basically kind of got warmed up by the top of that climb about an hour in, and it was definitely. I mean, the weather was nice, but it was chilly. So we didn't have any mud other than a couple drainages, but I think we were in like the mid 30s at the start. So there were a lot of people that I talked to that said they basically put every bit of clothing on that they had, even though you started going uphill. Myself had a short sleeve base layer, short sleeve jersey, long sleeve jersey, and a thin wind vest, and then shorts, leg warmers, like medium weight leg warmers, and shoe covers and wool socks. And at most, I unzipped. I had everything unzipped on a couple of the climbs, but I never peeled anything off, and I was never overheated. Now, granted, that's me. When the lead group of men came by me on the final climb, because they started at 9. I think we started at 9:35 or 9:40. It was a bunch of kids in skin suits came blazing by going uphill. So they were definitely racing, but it was pretty wild for such a challenging course. I think there were 8 riders came to the line together. They had a full sprint, and I finally saw some drone footage of it. Yeah, I mean it was like it was pretty wild to see that in a gravel race, that big of a sprint. But it was a great weekend. Yeah. Did
I
you see
saw the
some of that?
photo. Well, I saw the photo, and instantly I get alarmed when I see a photo like that because Unbound has this problem too. It's like, Unbound tries to have the cones, the cone zone. I go, you just can't have a cone zone in a finish. What if you're going to have a pack sprint?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, how safe was the approach to that massive field sprint that I just saw at the Hopper?
Yeah.
So,
It was pretty safe. They don't
yeah.
it's just one road coming down in there. And the only people that are getting caught are people that are on the short course. Um, I think they know well enough to get out of the way. It's not like Unbound with thousands of people coming in either. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that, but I mean, I think you and I all think about similarly in those respects as far as safety goes. You know, how is it safe when you got a bunch of guys that are kind of cross-eyed because they're going hard? But it sounds like from talking to the riders a bit that they you know the climbing wasn't hard enough toward the end, and then that 13-mile climb that we did at the start is about a 11-mile descent back to the finish, although it's one of those descents that you have to pedal the entire way. Like you might coast through a couple corners, but it's not steep enough. It's like 5 to 9%, pretty much off and on. So it's a power descent. So those guys, they couldn't get away from each other, and it was pretty wild. And then on the women's side, the top 3 all finished separately. So I guess it depends on the day, but it was a cool event. And the new routes, refreshing a course that's been around for a while, but Miguel Crawford, who runs that series, and he gets access to this. A lot of it from this Mendocino Redwood Company, these private roads we spoke about last episode. So that's it's pretty phenomenal to get out there and ride on that stuff. I did talk to a lot of people that rode long course. There were several people from up in this area, and they said, yeah, it was just, other than being cold, but again, that's kind of, yeah, it was cold, but you also got to be prepared for it. So good fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 4 in the series.
You want to tell me what your tires were?
I rode. I threw on a brand new pair of Maxxis Ramblers 45s the day before, and I did that because I've ridden those tires before, and I know they're very predictable for me. I've got some other tires. I've got some Vittorias I want to try, but I know myself well enough to not throw a new tire on that I haven't ridden before that, and that. I probably could have gone with a little bit narrower tire, but I know the most fun I have on that course is I know the one descent, the big descent that we went down, and it's not terribly rocky, but there are a couple little sections, and I did flat there last year. He uses another course that uses that descent, so they're perfect. Ultimately for me, having a little more volume and having that predictability is way more important. We got another event coming up in about a month, and it's about 50-50 road, where this was like 95% pavement, and this was 95% dirt and about 5% road. At least the long course. The short course was a little more on the pavement to dirt ratio, but yeah, Huffmaster's coming up the end of next month, and that's about a 50-50. So maybe it'll be and not rough at all. Although I'll know more if I go do the pre-ride on Sunday with him to see what the conditions are like out there. But yeah, predictability. So happy with that. Yeah, I'm you say you're lazy, with your tire changes. I think I don't know if I was lazy or I was unconfident in my ability to do it, but I mean, I'm to the point now where I could throw a new tire on and go ride 15 minutes later. Um, but that's just from doing it enough. So happy with the setup that I had, and yeah, it was all good. I think the racers that go for lighter setups. I know as I got caught by the leaders, the first 8 riders, and then five, and then there was one solo, and then 4 riders caught me, and in that group was Ted King, the first of kind of the older riders, and then Pete Stetna was there too, and I guess Pete actually flatted on a climb, cut a sidewall, but that course is traditionally always the riders have opted for a little bit lighter setups, and it's not that light when you gotta change a tire, so
Yeah.
unfortunate. So the start of Pete's 2026 farewell tour. I guess he had said farewell to the group when he flatted. He said he had to actually boot it, put a tube in, and boot the tire. So it goes. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just an errant rock. It's on a climb, so you never know.
His farewell tour is having, a little bit of rust streak. He set the KOM on Mauna Kea or one of those Hawaiian volcano climbs, and
Haleakala, yeah,
it turned out that Alex Wild, I think I got the guy's name right, had
yeah,
actually was right behind him was right in front of him, and on the same day beat him. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh God,
But
that would
wasn't
that would mess with my head so bad.
but it was like, was it 7 seconds or something? I mean, it was really close, right? I read something about that. Yeah, I think Alex was the guy that won. He won it at Low Gap this past weekend too. So he took his Haleakala form and made the lead group, and then out sprinted those guys. And if you watch that sprint, he led it out from quite a ways out and somehow managed to have nobody come around him. So, but yeah, I could see that could mess with you. But I
Yeah.
mean, at least you're in Hawaii.
Well, leading out a sprint, that kind of sprint and winning shows he's fit. So
Yeah, yeah, because it's a
deserved it.
slight downhill drag. Yeah, low gap. So well, yeah, it was a little cold those routes, but yeah, it was fun. So then, of course, real racing has started, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, we got the Alula tour, which I enjoy on YouTube. I like their highly produced segments with Seth PK. Uh, those are good. I
Yeah,
like they're 8 minutes long. I feel like I got all I need out of that. you
yeah,
know, I've watched Milan, drag race in the sprint. I've watched sand blowing across the road. I watched a horrible high speed crash. Um, the UAE young kid who's clearly designed to win the race was like holding onto the door far too long to get dragged back up and drafting off the back of the car. Drafting off the back of the car, okay, but like really holding the door for like 30, 40 seconds. I was like, whew.
and they didn't kick him
Right.
out.
They did, but he was
Yeah,
arguing back, and it just,
yeah.
he's the favorite to win the race. I don't know.
You can't hold on to the car. Yeah, drafting the car is one thing.
Thank you.
Holding on to the car is just is is straight up cheating, right? The only car you
Yeah.
could hang on to is the medical car if you're getting attention from the doctor, and that's it. So yeah, that's the Swiss kid on UAE who
Yeah.
crashed. What, he crashed twice in the first? Was it the first stage? He crashed twice. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's too bad. I've done the same watching those highlights, and it was interesting. You mentioned Set PK. I heard his voice, and I was like, huh, I wonder. You know, if the ASO is involved, and there is a partnership between the I guess it's the Saudi, what I found here, Saudi Cycling Federation in collaboration with the ASO put this event on, but it seems like they use the ASO TV production experience to get it pretty dialed. So it is, if anyone out there hasn't watched those highlights, they do a really good job on that. So
Yeah, they really do. Yeah. Tour Down Under, you know, uh, I guess we had the kangaroo crash, which is coincident, the essential Australian experience there. Um, But the Challenge Mallorca team time trial was really interesting to me yesterday because it was a chance for these teams to test out their equipment and their training and their rotations, their everything for the tour, because there'll be a team time trial in the tour this year. So Red Bull won that, and Dan Bingham is in there trying to figure out all the strategy and using technology to figure out, how to work with Remco, how to be fast, and not just the equipment. It's the rotational strategy and who's going to sit on his wheel, and fascinating, right? Good stuff.
Yeah.
Although the highlights of that on YouTube are not very prevalent. Like I watched someone almost filming the screen or something. So I haven't found those highlights.
Yeah,
And
I
then
can't imagine.
Remco,
Go ahead.
Remco did a 50-mile solo break today and won. He hasn't won a road event in a while. He always wins the time trials, right?
Yeah.
But so he won a road stage today, solo for 50 miles.
Yeah, that would be terrible, having to be the rider in the rotation that has to sit on Remco, because that guy is so powerful and so low. It's almost like that rider would. I wonder if they even come through in the rotation after that, or they just go through and off to give him a draft on the way back, a la Francesco Moser back in the day when they had someone, the guy that came through on his wheel in the team time trial would immediately pull off. So Moser had a draft on the way back. Yeah, that should be interesting. So last week we were talking about burnout a little bit, and you mentioned Stefan Kung, who's racing for Tudor now. Was that I saw that BMC has a new time trial bike, and he was on that bike. So yes, that obviously they were working on that. Was that in Mallorca as well? Was that time trial?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then I was privy to the information that only Stefan was on the bike and the rest of his team wasn't, and they were actually saying that they think the bike is fast, and so that his pull times, his strategy was slightly different than the rest of the team. I'm like, really? Come on, the bike makes that much of a difference? But I'm okay. I'll accept that is the answer. So yeah, the rest of his team wasn't. It was really fascinating to watch. Red Bull dropped most of their riders, so they were down to 4, maybe, or 3 or 4 at the end. But Movistar looked amazing. I'm like, really? Like the team that doesn't have training camps and has all this controversy and everything, they were all tall and they were freaking dialed. And they were like, I'm like, whoo, they might do well in the tour. They were second in the team time trial, I believe. And they were all tall and powerful and just like, and the whole team together at the end.
Yeah, that says a lot with the team together. Although, I mean, we've got 6 months before the tour starts, so they still got plenty of time to screw it up.
Yeah. No, don't worry, they will. Don't worry, they will.
Unfortunately, yeah. If history is any precursor to what's going to happen, so, oh man. Yeah, well, the kangaroos and that was kind of my takeaway. I did the same thing with the Tour Down Under as we've been doing with the Alula Tour, watching the highlights, just because I don't have the time to sit in front of the tube. But yeah, 2 takeaways. 3 takeaways for me. One is that the kangaroos and heat had some definitely say on the outcome with the Wollonga Hill stage getting shortened because of the heat. It was super hot there, and then a kangaroo crash. But so UAE was dominant, but they also lost 2 riders to crashes, including Jonathan Narvaez, who was in second place when he crashed out. So it's kind of a mixed bag for them. And then you mentioned, I think before we went on, that Jay Vine let everyone know that he had a broken wrist from that crash. So yeah, they got the results, but quite a cost, and then with that Christensen kid crashing in the Lula Tour, that's kind of a bit of a rough start there for sure.
Yeah.
So, and then that's kind of it. And then what do we got? Then we got the UAE Tour, I believe, coming up. But
Remco's announced that he's going to ride it, so that'll be interesting. I think Jonas is going to be there, and Pogacar.
I thought Pogacar's first race was going to be Strade Bianche.
You're correct.
A guy named Ed told me that last episode.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then of course we got like the big race this weekend, cyclocross worlds, right?
Yeah.
And a bunch of Dutch athletes, favorites on the elite side for both the women and the men, and the race is in the Netherlands, so it should be just crazy there. Um, right? We got the guy. You mean the term GOAT, right? The greatest of all time. It gets thrown out there a lot, but with Mathieu van der Poel going for his eighth cyclocross world championship, um, yeah, that sets him. I guess he's tired with Roger de Vlaeminck now. Has an opportunity to go one up on that. So that will be. I mean, really looking at that, it's like the race. I think the money's on who's going to fill out the podium. You know, with VDP has just been so dominant, just freaking crazy how dominant he's been.
Well, he's poetry in motion. You can say that dominance is not always the most intriguing thing to watch. You know, like the Indurain years of the Tour de France or something were fairly boring.
Yeah,
Um, but he's just poetry in motion to
yeah,
watch race in his technique, and even when he has a bad moment, he gets a flat or something like that. Like he keep his mental composure and his just phenomenal. They say this course this weekend is entertaining to watch, so I hope that's the case.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's always fun when I watch the watch those races on the elite men's side. It's like you count the number of Dutch flags versus Belgian flags in the results, like in the the top 10, and then the 11 through 20. It's like it's crazy how good those nations are at cyclocross. And they're saying, I mean, really, he's hands down the favorite, and then his teammate Tibor Del Grosso has been racing very well, and then we got Thibaut Nice as well. So the son of Sven Nys, who was multi-time world champion. It should be interesting. It seems like oftentimes there's a spoiler, but generally not for first place. I mean, it's been Van der Poel and Van Aert for what, the last 10 years or something ridiculous. So that it'll be interesting to see. And then I mean, that's kind of it on the men's side, I think. There's just I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like, but we'll find out when we turn it on.
Yeah, I think I heard chance of rain.
Yeah,
So I hope they get some mud. That'll make it more
yeah,
interesting.
make it
Sounds like
interesting.
we can watch it on Flow Sports in the United States, which is fairly premium to pay for, but the UCI has a YouTube channel, and probably very quickly after the race, the highlights and the full race will be there on YouTube.
Yeah,
So should be fairly easy to watch it.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, I oftentimes will watch, just stay off the socials and don't look at my email, and then I can watch the full race or the highlights and still be surprised versus getting up super early. Yeah. I mean, and then really, I would say on the women's side, it's like the battle of the Dutch women. They've been so dominant. Lucinda Brand was so dominant early on, then she kind of faded out, and then that Celine Del Carmen Alvarado, she started winning. She came on strong, and then Puck Peters has come on strong. So I mean, I would just, it's going to be crazy to be at that event with how the favorites are Dutch riders on home soil, the fans, and hopefully the fans, we don't have any of the outliers that sometimes, like you get 30 or 40 or 50,000 people here. And I think generally most everyone is very well behaved, and oftentimes it's the fans that aren't well behaved that make the headlines. But hopefully we won't have any of that, and we'll have nice, exciting racing and well behaved fans, consuming their frites and their beer and having a good time. Wow. I still, that's something I still want to do. I have never been to one of those giant cyclocross races over there, but it looks pretty wild. And if anybody hasn't watched it, even if you watch the highlights, like these crowds, it's just ridiculous. It's a national pastime, fun to
Well,
watch.
one of the cool things is the drone really shows off the crowd and the
Yeah,
depth of the crowd. and they'll probably do some follow drone work in the race like they did the last couple of years. So there should be some amazing shots from the air of the crowds.
The crowds, yeah. And the follow drones are fun because you get a better feeling for the speed that they're going on these courses, right? The fixed cameras, it's often difficult to tell, right? Because it's this long shot and they're pointing at the riders or they're watching them go through a little section and you don't get a feel for it. But there was several years ago, one of the first cross worlds that had drones, and I remember, and it was a Vanderpool Van Aert battle, and I remember watching the drones and watching these guys hit like these G outs and different things, and I was one amazed at the speed, but two like the bikes, like how much the bikes were taking with these big riders on them, and them railing through these corners or hitting these G outs. It like gave me a appreciation for whoever builds their wheels.
Yeah.
They were hitting stuff. I mean, just the stress on those wheels when you think about it, I mean, I'm guessing those guys are riding 24 or 28 spoke wheels. I mean, that's not a lot of spokes holding that rim to those hubs and these big riders. So yeah, pretty impressive as far as who's doing that. I'm guessing that their wheels aren't just coming out of the factory, that they got people building wheels for them specifically, but you never know.
You don't.
We grew up doing that, right? Building and tuning wheels, and it's an art. So I don't know, but it's I think there's a lot of people out there these days that have never known anything but a wheel as a commodity, not as a piece that you tune for your ride. So,
or it's built specifically for you and your body weight and your style,
Yeah.
And I think with the coming of and we're not going to stop this trend, the coming of carbon spokes, it's just like, I don't know. Will carbon spoked wheels be in cross with all that, turn stuff going on? I don't know. Maybe they're already out riding carbon spokes. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, I still think that like as far as like customizing your ride, having someone build a set of wheels for, one's weight and their riding style is the most affordable and probably the most rewarding thing you can do, is get a good set of wheels built. Because I often laugh about that. It's like, you can go buy a set of prefab, right? Zips or NVs or Shimano wheels, but you buy a 303. It's the same for 190-pound me as it is for 120-pound person that buys those wheels, and it's a lot of different stresses. So, for those of you out there that have never had a set of custom wheels built, you can find yourself a builder in your area. It's well worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People just, they don't understand. They don't even really understand how a machine built wheel is made versus how a hand built wheel is made. And I'm probably I pondered this a lot, and part of it is those machine built wheels have gotten pretty good.
Yeah.
They just aren't having a lot of problems with them. So they're like, well, why would I need someone to hand build my wheels? Like,
yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a durability thing. I think it's a tuning thing. I mean, and as I think it's more with people as you ride more, and you can appreciate the nuances of how you're getting your bike tuned. Like the first time, if you ever get a custom built frame with geometry or layup, if it's a carbon bike, or different tubing weights, back in the days of steel bikes, you can tune that. And I don't think it has anything to do with durability. More for me, it's comfort and tuning for the ride. So we shall see how that goes, and that's it. I mean, that's kind of a blinded by science tech type of thing. I mean, we grew up, right? Like they built wheels in the bike shop before wheels. I mean, there were no pre-made wheels, maybe on the very low end bikes, right? That came in. But there was always someone or a couple people at the shop that they were known as the wheel builder. But it seemed like mechanics back in the 80s and into the 90s, they all, like, to call yourself a bicycle mechanic, you did have to know how to build wheels. And that was something that was great that got handed down to us, a little bit, or at least knowing that that was important. I mean, and even our friend John Jones, who he made a business out of building wheels. It was, I know I've got at least one or two sets of JJ wheels still that I ride. I think you've got some as well. Yeah, getting that tuned. So
Yeah, John was a real artist in learning. I remember the first set of wheels that he built. Actually, my ex stepfather taught him how to build wheels, and then John was really detailed and grew his career from that point on. He built wheels for you and for others, and he took the time to teach the consumer and his customers about what was going on, and he valued feedback. Like he worked really well with Darren on learning what Darren wanted.
mm-hmm.
I'm thankful to have a set of his wheels still in my garage, and unfortunately I crashed the front one and cracked it, but
Yeah.
I still have the rear one.
Yeah. Well, that's the carbon rim thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Carbon. So I back to the Low Gap Hopper last week, and we did a shakeout ride on the Saturday before. So went up that same climb, that's the start climb, and then looped around and came down a descent on a county road that had two-way traffic, but it was a way for us to loop back into Ukiah. And that night I was out at dinner, and I was sitting with the guy, and I don't recall his name, but we met him at the Bovine Classic. He was retired Air Force. I don't know if you remember, I think maybe we sat with him at that lunch after we did that first shakeout ride. Yeah. And he cased a rock on the pre-ride, the shakeout ride, and busted his front rim, carbon rim. And he happened to come in, and we were sitting at the bar having burgers, and showed me a photo. He's like, "Hey Kurt, check this out." And he's like, "I broke my rim." He goes, "I didn't even realize it till I got back to my car and ran my hand around it. Somehow he cracked the rim, but the tire stayed on. There was a big crack in the sidewall." And then he went to one bike shop in town, and the guy had a wheel, a prefabbed aluminum wheel, and he bought that. And it was funny. I laughed, and he showed me the photo. I said, "Well, that's why I ride aluminum rims." I go, "Because they dent, they don't break." And he laughed. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "When I've got carbon," I was like, "Well, I ride carbon because aluminum ones, they dent, and carbon ones, they don't dent." I'm like, "Yeah, but they break." So yeah, it's the tech is definitely there. I think there's a lot of different qualities of things. And I mean, ultimately, if you hit a rock just right, it doesn't really matter. But he didn't even cut his tire, but he wrecked his rim. So pretty wild with that stuff. Yeah.
We had a gentleman crack his carbon bar right at the stem, so instantly I think over torqued.
Uh-huh.
And he rode the long course of gravel and wine with his bar draped around, his hand on the stem and his hand on the drops. So he had his hand on the drop and he was holding the stem, and he rode probably 20 miles like that. And you can find a follow video from Jake Ornez and others of him riding, holding the stem. And I don't know, man. It sounds like he needs a better torque wrench, but
yeah. That's a brave dude right there to continue to do that. I'm guessing he's visited his physio and or chiropractor a few times this past week, getting that sorted out. We've talked a little bit about carbon bars. I had carbon bars, and it was 2 years ago, Rock Cobbler 2024. I had a catastrophic failure of a carbon drop bar. Although mine broke right at the top of the curve where the tops curve around and start heading toward the levers. And I was by myself at the Rock Cobbler, had done already some of the big high speed descents, rocky stuff, and I was just going through like this rhythm section. It was like this flowy, fun single track that was all smooth, and I was just jumping over these little jumps, and not even jumps. It was just the way the trail was. You get some speed, and I came off one and landed, and I heard this, And I was like, oh, that did not sound good. Got off my bike, went over, got in front of it, and grabbed both of the drops of my bars and torqued back and forth. And one side of my handlebar, it broke right at that curve there. So it wasn't where, it was above where the lever attaches. And I had never crashed those handlebars either. And I just like had this vision of 45 minutes earlier, I'm going down some descent at 40 plus miles an hour of a road that's cut in the side of the hill with rocks all over it. And I'm bombing down there, and my handlebar didn't break at that point. Because I was super fortunate that when it broke, then the trail kind of just was easy. I didn't know what happened. I just heard a noise. And so fortunate that it didn't break off. But after that, I've taken carbon handlebars off of all of my bikes, and I just don't want to ride them anymore. That's a tech that, like maybe, right, it's a little bit of dampening there, but like you said, this guy, I don't know if you just saw him. I don't know if you know the guy, but like, yeah, I guess if it was right at the stem, oh, excuse me, it's an advertisement for owning a torque wrench and actually using it. But it's scary, right? Aluminum bars tend to bend. They don't fail catastrophically like that. And that guy's super lucky as well.
Yeah, there's a company out of Australia that'll certify mechanics at a bike shop and has a licensing training course and technology they want you to pay for. Well, it's their business, they should, but um, they use, I think, some kind of ultrasound, and they can look inside a frame. And I think they also claim to be able to look inside handlebars and just check out what's going on. Because you could get something from the manufacturer out of the box that has a defect, because you're talking about its layup work. It's just
Yeah.
it's not it's done by hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And someone could make a mistake, or there's just a structural imbalance. And anyway, I think that
Yeah.
that company and what they're offering, I know there's some questions about how good their technology is, whether it really can catch everything. And then there's liability, obviously, for the shop, because the shop is like saying, well, we checked it. And, there's a lot of liability on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I think handlebars are something that I know with me, I just don't want to mess with, because if a handlebar fails, it's your face. I mean, really,
yeah.
right? The handlebars break, you're going face forward. You're going sternum on the stem, and then it's like head first into the ground, and that's just, it's frightening. So, but I mean, there are a lot of people out there that ride carbon bars, and that's great. But for me, personal preference, I stay away from that for sure.
Yeah.
I say they're bad,
So
good or bad. Yeah.
that's some blinded by science. You got
Yeah.
a positive Pete for us?
Well, I would say the only other blinded, I got a little more blinded by science, is that, so we spoke a little bit about the drop bar, decision by Lifetime to not allow drop bars at Leadville and Little Sugar. And as I was at this gravel event last weekend, that was really a true gravel ride. It wasn't a mountain bike ride. I mean, you always get people, and I think, you've done it some places that you're just more comfortable on the mountain bike. But the thing that I noticed is that the majority of people that ride drop bars don't ride on the drops. They ride on the tops, riding out on the levers. That's a different hand position, but that was just like a little other tech that I kind of noticed. So maybe next time you're on a group ride or you go at one of these, check it out. But yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And even myself, I mean, obviously the drops are lower center of gravity. Your hand is less likely to, in a sudden jolt, is, sort of supported by the bar itself. But I find myself that I ride the tops a lot. And I know that's not the way I was raised and how I grew up, but it's just, I don't know, that also the braking has gotten so good from the tops,
That's
your
true.
leverage point. So
Yeah. I find myself on the descents, definitely on the descents. I'm like always on the drops.
yeah,
And if I'm really, and oftentimes, if I'm in a group and the group's rolling fast, I'll choose to be on the drops versus on the tops. And when you're talking the tops, you're talking about riding on the levers, not riding on
Yeah,
the tops like that, but riding out on the levers. You see my hands there.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which is like what
Yeah.
we see most of the World Tour riders, we see them on their tops, and the sprinters get on their drops when they sprint. Maybe that's about it, or when someone attacks. But yeah,
But even now, we're seeing sometimes people sprinting on their tops at the World Tour, and it's just
yeah.
crazy to see that. I also find that my drops on my gravel bike are just so flared and so wide, and I feel a little bit awkward. And then
All right.
my brake levers are really dialed and in. And so when I get down there, I just feel like I'm just sucking wind, and you know, so
Fair enough. Yeah, I have a traditional like road bend aluminum
mhm.
handlebar, so that makes a difference. Yeah, I've been on some of those bikes with those super like flared out bars, and it's a strange feeling. Plus, it increases your reach too, right? If you're reaching for your
Yeah.
normal drops, they're almost right in line with your levers, and then all of a sudden, there's I don't know 4, 6, 8, 10 degrees of sway on those things or flare on those things. Yeah, I see how that can be uncomfortable. It's like, oh well, it's wider, it's more stable, like a mountain bike handlebar. But yeah, but if you aren't riding on it, then how's it more stable? Yeah. Well, I low gap last weekend, positive Pete. So I mentioned Pete Stetton earlier. Poor Pete got a flat on the climb, but one of the very cool things that Low Gap they've done for the last several years is they do a mentoring program with junior riders, and it's through this the Northern California League, high school league, and there's this program called Grit, and it's girls riding together, and they pair a young rider, so like a junior girl who's just kind of getting into it to ride with a pro at the hopper. So they get paired up and they basically have like a one-on-one, and you get to ride with a pro, and they talk you through it, and you do the whole thing. And the goal is to get and retain more female athletes on the bikes. And they had a great turnout this year. And that's just like, it's this positive thing that Miguel does at the Grasshoppers to get this thing rolling. And if we don't keep getting more younger riders in, then there aren't going to be rides to do, because there aren't going to be people riding. And so getting the kids out there, it was just so fun. And I rode with a bunch of them, because most of them did the short course, and we started the short course started all together, where the long course started in age categories, in waves. So I got to ride with them, and I mean, there were, from kids that were totally dialed on really nice bikes to kids wearing sneakers and flat pedals. But they consistently, what I saw was big grins on their faces, and it was great just to see them out there. It reminded me of, when we were kids and we first started riding before we raced, just doing that stuff. And a couple of those old pictures we saw recently of us riding, through Santa Barbara Middle School. So that was like my positive Pete segment is that program. And then as a little bonus, as I was finishing, that the course there at Low Gap finished on that long descent. It was about 11 miles of descending, but it's all pedaling. And I ended up catching a couple junior girls that were riding on mountain bikes, who had been out there, and I'd seen them earlier, and they were like, you could tell they like had a pact that they were going to stick together through the entire ride. And then there was actually a picture of them at the finish coming across hand in hand. But I caught up to them, and I know that I give a pretty good draft. And when I can pedal like on a downhill, like, as terrible as that terrain was for me at the start, it was great at the finish, because it was all downhill, and I can carry some momentum. And I was able to get by and get these two kids, probably their combined weight was like the same as my total weight. Like, they were pretty tiny riding these mountain bikes, and I was able to tow them all the way down the climb, and we started picking people off one by one. And then we caught this one dude who's, probably about my age. And and he kind of like got away from us, and then I eased up and I got them on my wheel, and we kept riding. And I towed them almost all the way to the finish, but then they backed off and finished together. But I got done and came back and found these kids, and this little girl comes up to me. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" She goes, "That was so cool." She goes, "That was so fun riding behind you." She goes, "I felt like maybe we should have like come through and pulled through." She goes, "But you didn't seem like you wanted it." And I'm like, "Well," she goes, "Plus I don't think you would have got any draft off of us anyway." But it was like, that was the highlight of my whole day was these kids, and then the fact that they noticed it. So yeah, that was the juniors out there, and then riding with them was the positive Pete, and just it put a big grin on my face. And then we had a huge part of what the Grasshopper's also doing is they're doing separate junior awards now at their events for this year. So it was great. I mean, there were maybe 100 kids or close to it, and they hung out and did the awards and the parents and the whole thing. So, yeah, a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well,
yeah.
it was nice that Pete went out and made a post about juniors should never pay entry fees, and then in Colorado when he was growing up, they didn't.
Yeah.
So he gets it, and I think I don't know if the Hopper charged a junior entry fee, but I've seen lower junior fees at a lot of events, and I think that's a great concept. I love the mentor ride buddy scenario. That's great.
Yeah, that one's really cool because it can lower that kind of the barrier to entry, because it can be pretty daunting. Like, I'm going to go ride, like some kid that's never ridden that far and do that. And I think the Hopper, for the short course, when they're doing the mentoring, juniors ride for free, or it's almost free. Maybe they pay the insurance fee. But if the juniors are racing like at the elite level and they're racing in the elite race, then they pay. But I think with the mentoring programs, it's going to do that. So, and
what do you
they
think about?
I was saying
I was just going to ask. Go ahead.
The last part of the junior thing is that Muck-Off is a sponsor of the Hopper Series, and they do a full bike wash after the event. And they had a bunch of the kids from the composite high school team up in that area that washed all the bikes. And then it was free bike wash, but then you donate money, and that also went to the programs to keep kids riding. So yeah, they're doing the right thing of keeping the kids involved.
I like it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I ponder sometimes, and it's maybe a bit of a cliche, but junior riders are under the support of their very gracious parents, right? And they're getting,
some of them are, yeah.
Yeah, not all of them.
Not necessarily all, but yes.
I'm always focused on the U23 riders that aren't on a U23 development team, but they're probably, trying to branch away, live on their own. They might still be going to college. They might be going to community college. They might be working, but they seem like a vulnerable group to me. Do you agree?
Yeah. And I think especially like probably on the road side than the off-road side. But yeah, I mean, making that transition is super challenging, because we do get a lot of, like with the high school leagues doing that, and then going into junior racing, and it can be very tough making that transition. And I mean, there have been some programs that have worked with that type of stuff, but yeah, I think it's definitely more prevalent on the road. Like if you're trying to make it on the road, because road racing is much more of a team sport, where mountain biking has teams, but generally it's a kind of a mass start time trial.
So what else do you think off-road does better for U23 than road does? It seems like when NICA's over, or whatever, when high school racing is over, it's like there's a gap. Like some of them are going to be on their college teams. That's great. Some of them aren't. There's like this window, and I feel like we're getting a lot of kids falling through the cracks, which is, that's fine. They're probably branching off and doing other things, but
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I talk about road racing. It's like, is there even road racing anymore? I think it's more like trying to make it at that elite level and getting into the world tour. I do think events, like Gravel and Wine or the Hopper series, they do, they have a competitive aspect to them. I say a lot of people just get out to ride with their friends, and so there is that option there. I mean, as far as the support goes, I mean, what it is support is that someone getting a deal on stuff so they're not paying full price. Is that entry fees? I think it varies, and I don't. Most of my experience with off road recently is with gravel stuff. As we started the pod, I've started to pay attention to mountain biking a bit more, and then with riders like Kate Courtney and Christopher Blevins, and even Keegan Swenson winning the Marathon Worlds, I've started to watch the mountain bike stuff. I mean, we had some pretty amazing riders, the Olympics last year. So I don't know exactly what the answer is to that, other than there's a lot of these organized type events. And even the Bike Monkey events, Truckee Tahoe Gravel, they do Stetna's pay dirt, right? They've embraced the juniors don't pay, but I don't know about the U23s. Yeah.
Well, I would hope that we're not sponsoring Masters riders because they are about to retire or have retired. And they've done quite well for themselves. Let's focus on U23 and that gap after mom and dad are done supporting you. I don't know. It just seems like important to focus on supporting them.
Yeah, don't get me started on sponsoring Masters teams. That's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, well. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we had our positive Pete. Yeah. Blinded by science. Anything else comes to mind?
The amateur tour. No, I mean, other than maybe those kangaroos made an amateur move by jumping into the peloton. Yeah, and I'll have to watch the Lula tour to see what went wrong with all these crashes they're having there, because it seems like there've been a proportionately large number of crashes in that event, and like you never like to see riders crash, but especially like right when they're starting out their season or they're trying to make a positive impression, say with a new team, or they've been given a bigger role on a team. That's always tough to see. So, yeah.
Well, the things to look for is echelon, blowing crosswinds, blowing sand, subpar road conditions, finishing chutes where there's not padding on telephone poles and fencing, because I don't think that part of the world has a lot of finishing chute safety equipment. I don't know how you get it to that part of the world, but it's sort of alarming,
Yeah.
And sometimes the road conditions. So it'd be interesting to see what you see when you watch it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of crashes there every year.
Yeah, I would think that. I mean, you can get just about anything to anywhere in the world, and I don't think that the Saudi Cycling Federation and by extension the Saudi government is hurting for cash for safety equipment. So I'm pretty sure that if they really wanted to get it there, they could do it, And if they have to store it for the other 51 weeks out of the year, let it be. But yeah. All right.
Well, that's episode 16 of the Service Course Report podcast. Thank you, everyone, for your likes, your comments, your suggestions. Those help us grow. So forward this to a friend, help us grow. We've grown significantly. We do quite well on Spotify, where you can watch us and listen, whatever your preference is. You can find us on YouTube if you need short clips. We have YouTube Shorts. We got 4 and 5 minute segments on YouTube. So we appreciate the support, and we'll see you all out there.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.